The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. This is Rich, I assume?
Yes, it is, sir.
Well, you are on the air. Canna Chat from the Zone. I'm Ralph Tyko, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And nice to talk to you again, my friend. You're always the most terrific interview that going. I just have to ask a question or two, and you have an honest answer, and I appreciate that a great deal.
My pleasure, Ralph.
All right. I want to talk about two things. The first thing was an article that you posted about a judge in New York, a federal judge, who turned down a request or a demand, I don't know what the word is, for wall-to-wall legalization. This would have been every state in the union on a federal basis. How close did that come to happening? And what can we do to get it closer?
Well, okay, that's a big first question. So, yes, I posted that in the Lanai Club the other day, just to let people know. It certainly was a topic that got a lot of play in the media leading up to the lawsuit. There were several, how to phrase it, there were several plaintiffs in the lawsuit. And the one who I believe was a 13-year-old girl was certainly the one who received the most press. But there were several plaintiffs in the lawsuit. They were suing the government and had several claims why it was illegal that cannabis was made illegal. So I want to preface everything I'm going to say with I am not an attorney. And I posted the article. I certainly read the article. I have a good understanding of the issue, but let's
and
be
you
clear,
do have a working
knowledge.
You're not an attorney, but you do have a working knowledge of the law, especially as it pertains to any legalization of cannabis, either recreational or medical, state or federal. So I don't want to have you sell yourself short. You are what I call a maven.
Well, thank you. So moving forward, though, on the lawsuit, so what would typically happen is, you would submit paperwork, you would start doing initial findings and get your day in court. So what seems to have happened in this case is that the plaintiff's attorneys, what the federal judge was claiming, did not follow standard procedure. So, and what he referred to specifically is anytime you have a grievance with government, you have to first seek to correct that by approaching the government or the government agency in this case and stating your beliefs, making your argument with them. If it's refused, then you can seek alternative means. So in this case, what apparently happened is nobody actually petitioned the government or its agency, in this case the DEA, to correct their mistake. So in this case, that means the government may have known about it per se, would be in the lawsuit. So that is procedurally incorrect. So what the judge did is he dismissed the lawsuit entirely based on procedural grounds. Now, what that means for the future of the lawsuit is, yes, we took a blow, but just like boxing, one blow is not a knockout punch usually. And in this case, some good does come out of this. But first off, by dismissing this on procedural grounds, that allows it, in my belief anyway, again, not a lawyer, to be refiled after the proper steps have been taken. But most importantly, in my opinion, the judge stated in his brief that there is a recognized medical use for cannabis, and the government states otherwise. That's the basis of much of that is the basis of Schedule 1, that there is no medical use, period, and that is the point of Schedule 1. So he also said several other things about cannabis. So most importantly, we have now in federal record a federal judge stating that there is a common understood purpose medically for cannabis. So that is, in my belief, one of the first times I've seen a federal employee state that, certainly in a very public way. Mm-hmm. So, as I say, yes, it was a setback, but I don't believe that this is over. And in addition, as we've seen over the last several months, I believe the time is right in Congress, or certainly more so maybe after the midterms, but we've seen bipartisan efforts and a bipartisan caucus created around cannabis to solve some of the problems that are being experienced. And this involves banking, this involves tracking, legalization, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we'll see maybe a refiling of this lawsuit. And I certainly hope that we'll see congressional movement on the legalization of cannabis nationwide.
Okay, now this judge could have dismissed it outright. He chose to do it the way he did. That is the positive sign that I see.
And I'm not so sure that there's a difference there. Again, I wish it's early in the morning here in California, but I wish we had a lawyer chiming in with us, because I'm not so sure that there is much of a difference there. He didn't say that the claims are null and void. He said that they can't move forward and it's dismissed from the system. So the way I initially took it, and maybe it's incorrect, I'm not sure, is if you have a hung jury in a criminal case, the DA can refile and start over. However, if a jury makes a decision, you can't try somebody again. So that's the way I'm looking at it. If I'm not 100% correct, anybody listening to this podcast who has a deep legal background, please correct me.
All right. Well, I call out to my buddy Scott Gilpin for that one, and I'll put a note on this to Scott's account, so he'll get to see it or at least listen to it and give us some advice.
Great.
Second thing I wanted to talk to you about is at the specifics in Alameda. What's going on in terms of recreational? Are they reconsidering that?
Well, no, that's never been their plan. However, we in Alameda may have our own plan, but I'll get to that in a moment. What's going on in Alameda? Well, the other night, last Tuesday, I believe, the 20th, I'm not 100% sure that was the right day, but last Tuesday, the city council was presented with the rules created by the city staff for the RFP process for cannabis businesses. That's the request for proposal. That's the application process. So that actually was not heard, even though it was on the agenda, and it was pushed to this coming Tuesday, which I'm actually thankful for, because I had naturally assumed that it would be on the consent calendar and the city would just rubber stamp it. However, luckily, that it didn't make it to the agenda, because it gave me a chance to really dive into what the process is that they created, not just superficially with the costs. And let me tell you a little bit about that. So after the fight that we all lived through in 2017 to bring any cannabis businesses to Alameda, a fight that wound up with a 3-2 vote on the city council, the city, to their credit, signed that in late November, became active in January, and in the interim took 2 months to create this RFP process. Fantastic.
Excuse me movement. 1 second, just for the benefit of those that don't know about this and the situation. Would you cite the 3 people that voted for on the city council and the 2 people that voted against. Just to put it out there, so in case anybody needs to remember this on election day, remember 68% of Alamedans voted for the legalization of cannabis. Recreational,
Sure.
call it what you want. These people don't represent us, and I don't believe that come election day, whenever they come up, unless they're already taken out of business because of the firemen union deal, which is a good possibility. But who are the 2 people that voted against?
Okay, well, I'll get to that in 1 second, Ralph, because this is a case where I think the city council may step up and do the right thing. So let me kind of detail that out.
I'm forgiving them credit. I'm forgiving them credit if you say that they're on the right track.
Well, I'm not saying that, but let's lay out the issue. So in this RFP process, in this application process, it's a 2-part process. It's a letter of intent followed up by an application. Now, I don't have an issue with what is required to apply or anything like that. What I have an issue is 2 things. One is there is certain documentation, of course, that's required, and if you don't submit it, that's a no-go. However, there is other documentation requested that will be scored on a scale. However, there is no rubric for that scale. There's just the points that will be awarded. In that process of 130 total points, without rubrics, many of them, 50 points is solely on an interview. Also, again, what seems to me a very subjective process. And here's the kicker, Ralph. The decision process for everything about a license the city is proposing, or the city staff is proposing, is comprised of only 3 people: the chief of police, a representative from the city manager's office, and a representative from the community development office. So what that effectively does is creates the 3 decision makers. One is the chief of police, one is the city manager, who is not friendly to cannabis in any way, seems to have her own agenda, and then a member of community development, who is the person running this whole program. So that makes sense. So what we are doing is we are suggesting that the citizens be in charge of this process, of this decision process and the selection panel. And the way we're suggesting that is that each council member would put forth 1 person onto a 5-person citizens cannabis selection panel. That would then have the benefit of somebody from community development who's not a voting member, but somebody from community development to guide the process. So what that achieves basically is that each city council member, no matter what their point of view on cannabis, would have their candidate on the council to ensure, on the selection panel, to ensure that their particular point of view is represented in the selection process. Additionally, what we know is that the cannabis community, after coming out of the shadows of the last 20 years and existing in California for far more than 20 years, has a lot of history and a lot of players. Some of them good, some of them bad, like in any industry. However, you would not know that as a typical consumer or a typical government official or even as the chief of police. You would only know that as somebody who has deep ties to the cannabis business community or the cannabis community in general. So in this way, with what we're suggesting, then the city has the advantage of having the inside story on the cannabis players who are applying for licenses, and in this way be able to benefit by having this knowledge and adding to their selection process this knowledge about this player if they have any history. And this way, the citizens of Alameda benefit, as does the city, by not potentially making a choice based on just the submitted information that turns out to be less than desirable for the community. Okay. So this city meeting is now coming up this coming Tuesday. and such. And I would encourage everyone listening to this podcast to come and speak to the city. This process needs to be, or the selection panel needs to be citizens driven. Just as there's a stigma that has always existed around cannabis that the state legalization laws are trying to dispel, in the cannabis community, there is a stigma around police officers, and for obvious reasons. Now, we're all trying to move forward in our relationships here. However, because the city is set up, or the city staff is set up, a 3-person behind closed doors, non-rubric measure, they've created not an objective process, but a subjective process. So in what we're proposing in this way, the citizens can stand in for the community, and this way the proper businesses can come that will be in addition to the community, not ultimately turn into a burden on the community. So I encourage, as I said, everyone to come this Tuesday. I encourage everyone to, on Facebook, to look up Alameda Cannabis Times and to join the group, because not only are we working on this, but to reference your previous question, Alameda could never get recreational in the fight last year and such. It just wouldn't be considered. There wasn't a vote on the city council. So the mayor, who was a giant proponent of cannabis coming to Alameda for many reasons, couldn't fight that fight. It was a known-loss fight. Well, as we started with the article, what we did is we expressed our interest. Our local government said no. So now the next step is for the citizens to put a ballot measure on the November ballot seeking recreational cannabis in Alameda. So we followed the process. And what Alameda Cannabis Times is about to do, we are about to initiate that process with what's known as an NOI, a notification, a notice of intent to collect signatures. That is the first process in putting something on the ballot. So with any luck, maybe we'll pick this up on this subject or this part of this topic, another conversation, once we have filed that NOI and once the city has titled our measure and we are allowed to reach out to the community and get signatures to try and put that measure on the ballot.
Well, let me keep it in the initial mode. Is there an ETA on that?
Yes, there is, but it's how about an estimated time of finishing versus an estimated time of arrival? Because in politics, it seems you always have to work backwards to some degree. So the process needs a certain amount of days from the time you submitted all your signatures to the time they are verified till the time the ballots are printed and you're in that ballot pamphlet that we all get till the election date.
Okay,
so working
is there plenty of time?
From November,
there should be plenty of time between now and November.
Not so much. A lot of urgency is what I'm saying. So working backwards from November, all signatures have to be collected and turned in order to have enough time by the first week of July. So we're basically at the first week of March. Once you submit a document, there's a legally dictated time that the city must respond in, but they give themselves a lot of slack, and it doesn't include weekends. So we are looking to submit that first NOI in this process sooner than later. And what I mean by that is most likely there's one question pending at this point in our submission, and once we can have that answered, then we are ready to submit. So hopefully, maybe after First Friday coming up here at the Bay Canna community, then maybe even Monday. So soon is my answer.
Wow, that's very, very good news, Rich.
Oh, and Ralph, last thing I do want to follow up because you asked specifically for everyone listening. The way the cannabis vote turned out, in order to allow medicinal cannabis businesses in Alameda, the way the players was the whole process was driven by our mayor. She was the one who initiated and fought for, and is really credited here. And that, of course, as you know, Trish Spencer. The other two people who voted, the other two council members, Jim Odie was a yes, Malia Vella was a yes, and the two that voted no, who often seem to have their own agenda on many items, is Marilyn Ashcroft. And unfortunately, she's not up for re-election this year, although there is talk that she will try to run for mayor, so you can actively vote against her for that. And the other no vote was Frank Matarisi, and he is up for election this year. So that's your scorecard.
Frank Matarisi has been a thorn in Mayor Spencer's side since day one on 80 different issues. He is less than transparent. How's that for a nice political commentary? So please, everybody, vote against Ashcraft if she runs for mayor. Vote against him if he runs for dog catcher. And we'll be a better community. We're going to be a prototype, because marijuana, when it's legalized in these different states all across the country, they're going to run into the same problems every city, state, county runs into here. And what we're doing is going to be, like I say, an example for what other cities are going to have to face. So I'm glad we're getting the word out. I'm glad we're letting people know in this terrific city that we live in, across the bay from San Francisco and over the moat from Oakland. It's fun being here. Let's keep it that way. And I'm very appreciative of your effort, so that on all of our behalf, we don't have to cross said moat to legally purchase cannabis, which has been legalized in the state of California. It's craziness. And
absolutely. And thank you, Ralph, very much for this format, so that people everywhere can learn about these issues, but specifically Alamedans can tune in and learn about it. And I just want to thank you for the forum.
Oh,
and
thank you. Thank you for being on here. You've become a regular, and that's not because you don't eat good. It's because you keep coming back with great ideas, and we're happy for it. Thank you very much on behalf of the Audio. How about that?
Thanks. Have a great day.
All right. Be well, Rich. And anybody out there listening, thank you for that. Spread the word and keep coming back. Adios, everybody.